Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about kind of all the issues that was ongoing with my car and how I fixed it. So I had a 2018 Honda Civic Si, um, and basically what I had wrong with it initially when I bought the car was I was told that the brake fluid was leaking and you had to fill it up every couple of days, right? So I said, okay, no problem. Maybe there's just a leak in the line or a leak in the system. Um, so the first thing I did was I took the car, went to a shop, and pulled everything apart um, from the underneath, anyways, so that I could, inspect all the lines and check them. And I'll have the pictures, snapshots of where the lines are at and kind of where they're located, so you can kind of see them here. But I visually inspected all the lines, made sure that I got eyes on every single part of the line, and they were all fine. They weren't leaking at all, so that was good. Um, so then I got to thinking, if there's no leaks in the lines, like why why am I losing so much fluid, And to give you a better idea of how much fluid I was losing, I would be putting in one tall can of brake fluid. Well, I put one tall can of brake fluid initially when I got the car because it was pretty low, and then not even a week later, the reservoir was completely drained. So I put another one in, and I mean the car brakes worked just fine as long as there was fluid there. I never had any issues with the pedal or the brakes not working itself. It was just the fluid was continuously low. So upon finishing checking up the brake lines, I started checking the um, brake pads and the brake pad bleeding screw and kind of like the caliper area inside the brakes just to make sure that I couldn't really see any leakage of any sort. Since I wasn't able to find any leaks throughout the brake line system, I thought maybe it would be on the brakes themselves. So I inspected all the um, little vacuum uh, nipples for the brake pads, and I looked inside the calipers and nothing. So at that point, I was kind of baffled, right? I didn't really know what to think. So called my pops up. My pops, he's a former mechanic, so I told him what was going on. He told me to check the brake master cylinder itself, which on this car it's connected right underneath the brake fluid reservoir. So I looked at it from the outside, couldn't see any leaks. I let him know, and he recommended I just pull the brake master reservoir out a little bit, just pop it out enough to see behind it, and see if I could find any leaks of any sort. So I pull the brake master cylinder out. It's two bolts. I believe they're 212s. Um, one on the left, one on the right side. I got them both out with a simple ratchet and socket set. Wasn't nothing too insanely difficult. You do gotta watch out for the washer on the bolts. Mine only had one on the right side. I don't know if it comes like this or if somebody was messing with it beforehand, but there's a little pressure washer. So yeah, just watch out, make sure you don't lose it. So I took both bolts off. Well, not all the way off. I just pulled them off initially, like enough to where I could pull the master cylinder out and just kind of peek inside. And sure enough, I pull it out and stuck a flashlight down in the little hole. And yep, there was some wet liquid I could see shining back at me. And I let him know. I let my dad know, and he was like, "Yep, that's your problem. You got to switch out the master cylinder." it sounds like you got a leak. So sure enough, I buy another part. Wait about a week. I get the part in the mail, and I go back to I go back to the shop and swap it out. Right. So once I pull this part off, I'll show you kind of what I was looking at here. So here you can see all the liquid that was inside of the brake booster, um, and legitimately it was filled up all the way as high as it can go without it leaking out of the part where the brake master cylinder would go into, which is where the hole was at on the brake booster. So immediately I knew that that was where my problem was coming from. So yeah, I took it out, and I'll also show you how much liquid I pulled out. I ended up measuring it afterwards, and I got about 1,700 cc's or milliliters of brake fluid. Um, so yeah, that's about equivalent to about 1.5, if not a little bit more than 1.5, of the big tall boy cans of brake fluid that was just sitting in my brake booster. And the brake booster is supposed to be completely dry, so yeah, found where my brake fluid leak was coming from. So yeah, I ended up just vacuuming it out. I used the shop that I was working at had a brake bleeding gun, and it was like one of the big nice bleeding guns that had a big canister for the brake fluid to be sucked into. It worked off of an air vacuum type where you'd hook it up to an air pressure hose. So yeah, I just made my own little adapter hose to fit, and sucked it all up, and then just pour it out, and it was an easy job. Otherwise, if I didn't have that, I probably would have had to use a syringe or like a siphon mechanism of some sort to getting all the fluid out. But yeah, luckily I didn't take that long in taking the fluid out, and I was able to get it as dry as I could, um, to get it back to running. So yeah, pulled the brake master cylinder out, and I swapped out the old master cylinder with the new one. Then I also took out all the brake fluid from inside the brake booster. So one mistake that I made when I was installing the brake master cylinder, I didn't bench bleed it, and it's pretty important to bench bleed. Otherwise, you're gonna have air in your lines, and you're gonna have a harder time bleeding the brakes later on. This was my first job with anything brake related, so it was kind of a learning experience for myself. But moving forward, I would recommend obviously bench bleed it. And if you don't know what that is, basically, so the two lines on the right run all the way into the reservoir. They go underneath right now the cylinder, how I have them positioned. But the two lines on the right end up going inside of the reservoir essentially, and this other line that I have here is just a little air line, I guess, or I don't know where that goes exactly, but put a line on there just in case it's squirted out while they bench bled it. So yeah, basically you run those two lines into the reservoir, you put liquid inside of the entire container, make sure that it's not running dry, and then essentially you're just going to push the cylinder in and out, in and out, in and out. I can't do it right now because I'm holding the camera with the other hand, but yeah, you just push it until you get no air bubbles coming out of here, and it's nothing but straight fluid, and then that's how you bench bleed the master cylinder. So once you're done bench bleeding the brake master cylinder, you can move on to installing it shortly after. Once you install it, you can see if it works good for you. For me, it didn't. So what I ended up having to do, after I reinstalled it, I ended up having to bleed it a little bit more. My brakes still weren't working 100%. In fact, they weren't even working like 60% at this point after I had reinstalled it and bench bled it. So I ended up having to have a second person come and pump the brakes for me while I bled the brake lines that are connected to the brake master cylinder. There's two of them. So yeah, once the pedal on the inside started to feel nice and firm, then I knew I was, kind of on the better side for my brakes. So yeah, I just had somebody help me out with pumping my brakes. I bled the brake master cylinder again, and once the pedal felt nice and firm, boom, that was done. Then at that point, my other person that was helping me out had to leave, so I was stuck all on my own to finish bleeding my brakes, which with this car was not a problem because there's a brake hold button inside of the car. Mine's located next to the shifter. So yeah, it's a little button. So basically what you do is you go in the car, you push your brake down all the way, then you push the brake hold button, and then once the dashboard green light that says brake brake holder or something lights up, then you know it's on. But then once it says held or hold, it's another green light, then you know it's holding the brake for you. Then at that point you can let it go and the brakes will be held. Um, if you don't see the light or you don't know where you're looking, you can also look at your brake lights to make sure that they're on so you know that the brake's engaged. What you're going to want to do first is open up your bleeder valve on your tire that you're currently bleeding. Then you're going to go inside of your car. You're going to push the brake all the way down to the floor. And obviously you're going to feel it hit the floor because you got the line open. Then once your foot hits the floor, don't let go, but push the brake hold button, and then you should see on your dashboard the green brake hold button turn on, and then it should also be another light that says held or hold. Then once that light's on, you can let go of the brake, go back outside to the tire, close the bleeder valve off, and then come back inside the car. Take the brake hold off by pushing the brake down and pushing the button. That should turn it off. Then you go back to your same tire and redo the process all over again. And then you do that for all four tires. And the way I did my tires, I did the driver front, then I did the passenger front, passenger rear, and then the driver rear last. But yeah, once I did all that, then my brake system was completely bled, and I took it on a road test, and the brakes worked phenomenal. Um, like immediate braking versus beforehand, I was having an issue where like I wasn't braking at all, or I could have been put in a dangerous situation because there was still air in my lines. But yeah, that's how I ended up bleeding the brakes on this car, sort of by myself, for the last part, anyways. But yeah. So I also wanted to add that whenever I bled the brakes on the car, I didn't take any of the tires off. I know I got some pictures in there with the tires off where you can see the bleeder valve and all that good jazz. But because I worked on the car at night, and I didn't have a jack at my house, I wasn't working on it at the shop. I didn't have anything to lift it up and take the wheels off. I'm just here to say that basically you can have enough clearance to get to the bleeder valves from where you're at. For the front tires, all you got to do is turn the wheel left or right, depending on which side you're on, just so you can get that clearance. I got a 10mm wrench, and it was an easy day. The back tires are a little tricky, depending on how long your wrench is and what kind of wrench you have. You might have some clearance issues. I'll attach some pictures here of how I put in my wrench and where I went. For the back tires, it took me a little bit longer than the front tires, just because of the whole clearance issue. My wrench kept rubbing up against the rim, but I was able to just open it enough to where I could let out air. It was a little bit slower than the front tires, but I was still able to get out all the air that I needed to out of the system. So yeah, just here to say that you don't have to take off the tires, but if you do take off the tires, it will make your job a lot easier. So for assembling the brake master cylinder, it's a three pieces basically. It's just the main reservoir with the cylinder, then you got a spring, and then you got a black metallic cylinder with some holes on the side. So if you did like me and just pulled it out and it was under pressure and everything just kind of went everywhere, then you might be stuck wondering where the hell does this all go, right? So if you actually take a look at the three different pieces, it's kind of easy to figure out how it goes. So on the long black cylinder, it's shorter on one end, and you can see here in some of the pictures, and it's deeper in the other end. So the shorter end is going to go towards the cylinder, and then if you look at I think the shorter end has the sides with the holes in it. If you look at the spring, one side has like a nipple on it, and the other side has a flat base with like a little X. So the flat base with the X is going to go on the short end of the metal cylinder. So then the nipple end of the spring should be going inside of the cylinder, inside of the master cylinder. Um, so yeah, so basically you're going to have your brake master cylinder, the nipple side going into the brake master cylinder, and then the short end of the black metal cylinder is going to go on the other side of that spring. And then essentially you're just going to put it back into the car the way it came out. Now with the long end of the black metal cylinder, that end's going towards the car. There's a little rod that's going to go in it, and if you actually observe the three pieces, you can see what I'm talking about. I didn't see any videos of this either anywhere on the internet, so I figured I'd just post this in here to help some people out. Alright everyone, so that wraps up my video. This is what happened to me and how I solved my issues. I hope that I was able to help some other people out there. I know I tried searching on the internet. I was unable to find anything at this time, given because this car is so new, and this issue likely isn't going to happen to anybody else anytime soon. Anyways, I hope. I think my car was just kind of a special case because of how I bought it. But if it did help you, or if it did help you understand, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe if you want to. By no means am I a car mechanic. I just simply watch YouTube videos and do online research and yeah, fix my own car, fix my own stuff. I don't do this professionally, so yeah, there's probably two ways to skin a cat here. So if I did anything that you guys have an easier way of doing, please feel free to share with all of us. That way we all know what the easiest way is. I just thought I'd make a video to help people out because there's nothing on it out as of this time.